Okay, guys, welcome to the podcast. This is Staying Alive, and I'm Louie J, and I'm thrilled that you're spending some time with us today. And on that note, man, I can't tell you, we've only been doing this for a short while, but the response and the comments that I've been getting personally as a result of some of the episodes have been really, really cool. And so I'm grateful for that. And if you're here for the first time, thanks for joining. And I think this is when you're supposed to ask people to do what all the podcasts ask you to do, which is like and subscribe and share. And if you think that this is going to have some space in your wheelhouse, in your mind, in your brain, then please follow the journey and let's have some fun together. But for me, it's been a really cool time. It's been a cool kind of development, and hopefully it's entertaining to you guys that are listening.
It's totally fun doing this, putting it together, doing this, packaging the podcast, but what's really rewarding is seeing those numbers. Like, people are tuning in. It's like,
right.
Well, hold on, I only have like 30 members of my family, so we've exceeded that. So who's tuning in? It's really exciting.
And that's where it's really cool, because people that I don't know, which is it's always the measure. I mean, you have all the support of your family and fan base and friends to start you off, and that's like any other business. Like, they're really going to be the ones that kind of help kickstart you. And then you make that transition where you no longer rely on them because they've got other things to do, and this might not be right in their wheelhouse. Just because they know me doesn't mean they really care.
They don't want to listen to your album.
Yeah, they want to listen to somebody else's. But that's where it's cool, because all of a sudden we're meeting a bunch of new people and new faces, and I'm learning about their experiences, and their comments back to me have been fueling this whole adventure. So, and the numbers are improving, and just like the way I approach business, I've never concerned myself about the money that it's going to bring. I've always concerned myself about the experience that I'm going to create. And numbers have never been something that I'm overly concerned about. Everybody talks about how many followers do you have, how many listeners do you have, and I quite honestly don't know until somebody tells me the numbers are going up, because I don't go spend time there. But that, I guess, in itself is a measure that this is making its mark, and it's moving through the airways and into people's personal time. For that, I'm super grateful. Like, I think if we can all spend a little time together and we're getting something out of it, that's cool.
It gives me the motivation to show up and do this and think about the next one and how we're going to approach and who's going to be on.
Right.
Like, it gives me that motivation, because it's like, people are listening, people are watching, and now we can't let them down, because they're probably expecting another one the following week.
Right.
So that part has been absolutely amazing. Doing this podcast with you and being a part of it, really, it's just, and especially the conversations that we listen to, it's just inspirational, motivational. It gets me through the week, and I can, face the challenges that I have during that week or what I'm going to attack that week, and just look back at the things that, we just had a guest on. We're going to introduce that guest today, but listening to what his challenges were starting that business was like, oh my God, like, I would have quit the first day.
Easy.
But it's just interesting. But what I do want to talk about right now is that this week you did like a Zoom party for Cabin.
Oh, yes.
Why don't you let us know how that went?
Of course, we're in second lockdown, and that really cripples the opportunity for us to do the business and make sales. And, I've been on a bunch of news broadcasts talking about small business, and hopefully I'm a voice for a bunch of us that are really challenged. I said in one of my posts that we're down, but we're not out. And I think the only way we're not out is because we keep on inventing new opportunities. One of them was to create a virtual online shopping party. Here we are, a barber shop that sells, incredible products that make it into the homes of people over the holidays. And that's a big piece of it. Like, we've done a ladies' night for 4 years, where it's our number one night. We pack Cabin with ladies only. They're pre-Christmas holiday. They shop, and it's on their calendars, and they tell me about it like every year. It's one of their highlight shopping events. So how could we possibly reinvent that or recreate that, knowing that we can't be together? Well, we did the big pivot and went online and hosted our first Zoom party, our Zoom shopping event. And it wasn't just for ladies. We thought we'd open it up to anybody that wanted to be there. And within the first couple of hours, we had over 100 registrants come through, and then we had 150, and then it was 175, and then by the time the next day came around, we were at 260, which was really, really cool, because now we can host far more than we would normally in any, live in shop experience. And so to that point, I thought, this is really exciting. Let's put some fun into this. Let's make it a variety show. And that's really what it was. It was almost like, I said jokingly that it's like Cabin meets the Home Shopping Channel, hosted by the Beverly Hillbillies. And if you were to throw Red Fisher and, Scuttlebuck Lodge in there somewhere, you probably had a good indication of what kind of night it would be. And then add to it, musical guests and thought leaders and, our political friends that are in our neighborhood coming in with some messages of hope and some holiday greetings. I think that was really cool.
You also had a lot of crossover promotion from different businesses that were donating gift packages. But
yes.
I also found it really informative about some of the products that you guys sell here at Cabin, that, when you come here and get a haircut and you're looking at something, one of your staff members will go through it. But this really gave us an opportunity to I want to get one of those cutting boards that looked amazing. I haven't seen them in here yet, and I know you just got them, but when I saw that come out and you were showcasing that, I'm like, I'm getting that.
Well, that's the thing too. We get a chance to connect with local artisans and put product in the shops, and not always will you get a chance to see them because your visit might have been at a time when they weren't available. But now with the online site, and with our chance to bring it to life at a show like we did on Thursday, it is a chance to talk about product, to get people some edutainment and education along the way. So I love that part too. The part that I didn't love the most was, of course, I'm always worried about technical glitches and challenges and all that and that fun stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, you put on a lot of virtual shows for corporate, but what was it like doing your own when it's for you?
Well, there's the difference. I mean, I'm always conscious of how much I'm spending for corporate. I always like to pretend like I'm spending my own money so that I've brought a lot of value for the dollar. And I was, of course, we're looking to gain sales and not spend, given that this business is different than that. And, I have the benefit of and the opportunity to spend some money reasonably, with some rationale. But when it came to ours, I really had to do it on the cheap. And I had the likes of all of our team kind of volunteering to put this together. And so it was interesting because, of course, I want my production to be as good, if not better, than the stuff I do for my clients. I certainly use it as a showcase, and we were challenged by the easiest, most obvious way to be able to, I don't know, the one thing that you can't let happen ever, which is, you're on mute. So, and you are, it's about how you quickly change and move on from that moment. I mean, we actually had a glitch in Zoom that, and all the testing didn't show anything that was going to be a challenge. But when people came in, they all came in unmuted, and you could hear them in the background. And
it's not working. I can't hear them.
I can't hear them. And then, of course, somebody that's in another distant land running the show from her house is scrambling to get everybody on mute. And, of course, when you put everybody on mute, you also put the camera and the show on mute. So we came in on mute, and now I look at it now and thinking how funny that is, that we produce shows for a living, and ours was plagued by the same challenges that we see in the real world. So the fun part is that everybody's very forgiving, and it rocks me because I have a whole plan of how we're going to do this, and all of a sudden you got to get back into, well, that wasn't what we planned, but that really keeps you alive and humble, and realize that even your best laid plans are gonna shake you sometimes.
Well, was it extremely entertaining? It didn't look like anybody was shaken. It's just one of those things. Technology. I mean, that's what it does to you when you're starting out. It fails, and then you figure it out, and it was pretty smooth sailing. The rest of the way, it was totally entertaining. Love the thing that you introduced where people were winning gift baskets. And you had an elf showing up at the door live. It was awesome.
Oh, thanks a lot, Frank. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had Secret Santa going out to the streets. I was inspired by the likes of like Oprah and Ellen, where it's like you win a car, you win a car, you win a car, and we weren't giving cars away. But back to your point about local business, this was a chance for us to showcase some of the incredible businesses that are in our community. And we collectively got together and said, hey, listen, I'm going to do this. Would you want to be part of it? And, we get asked for a lot over the course of any given time, like the year, whether it's soccer clubs, hockey clubs, sponsoring schools, auction items. So, I'm always conscious about the fact that locals give a lot and small business not always can afford to give. But in this case, I thought it would be a great chance to showcase some exceptional businesses in our neighborhood. And I could do this every day and not cover how incredible some of these businesses are and showcase what they do. But it was a chance for us to have some fun with it, send out the Secret Santa, greet people at their doors, and spread a little sunshine, because Bob Marley said it somewhere around the lines of, in the darkness, you must come out the light. That was a piece of light for us. And so it was received like that really well. It was a day brightener for sure. And I can't wait to do it again. And as a point, all the learnings that you take from your first time out, we're going to be able to put those into the plan and overcome those kind of challenges that we saw in our first episode. But we've been asked now, I don't know, probably a dozen or so emails or texts saying, can you please do another one before Christmas?
Yeah, and also, too, I don't think this is one of those things that just happened. Well, it happened because of COVID, but I think once down the road in the years future, it's going to be one of your programs that will be there because, like you said, look at the reach. You couldn't fit that many people in this place on an evening if you're opened up for ladies' night. You'll have your ladies' night again, but what I'm saying is this will be incorporated down the road because it was entertaining. It was great. Fun, and it was great to see those people's reactions when they received those gift packs. It was hilarious. And you could see all the faces in the Zoom call, just like they were all laughing and clapping, and it was really good.
That's awesome. And yeah, I agree. It's going to be part of our regular scheduled programming, regardless of what our condition is, our lockdown, our open up, or whatever. I think it's a really cool way to connect, especially when people are time starved. And it's an hour. Let's spend an hour together and let's make some fun moments and smile and share, a night together. Cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. So is there anything else on your mind these days? I know you have a lot to talk about.
I mean, I think everybody's in that holiday mindset right now. Hopefully everybody's transitioned into like all that over there into this over here, which is smile and happy and be fun. And not everybody gets a chance to share in all of what the holidays have to offer. So I think if I was to suggest anything for anybody out there is to reach out to somebody that maybe doesn't have a chance to connect with people, whether it's on a Zoom call or a phone call, or if you can distance and visit, then this is an important part to go beyond, or important time in our lives when you have to go beyond what's regular and maybe be that, friend, that neighbor that just has an ear, because I think a lot of people during the holidays need that ear. And I'm looking forward to it because it's, of course, more family time. And we're coming out of a crazy renovation right now just before we put up the big tree. And that's right around the corner for us. If not today, maybe tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that and spending some quality time with family. So hopefully everybody else has get a chance to do the same.
Well, let's talk about our guest that you have on today's podcast.
Yeah, quite a while ago, a guy came in the shop and was talking about, he loved the look and feel of Cabin and was talking about a business that he had conceptualized, and it was around craft beer. And, I wasn't really that, not that I wasn't interested, but I wasn't really, I don't spend time in beer and, certainly not much in craft beer. So I loved his enthusiasm and passion around what he was about to develop because we'd only opened, probably months before that when I first met him. And we shared a lot of the same kind of storytelling there about what some of the challenges would be. Anyway, his name's Ross Noel, and he's not only followed his passion and his dream and made a major transition in his life, and in a lot of cases the story is very similar to mine where, at some point you decide, what else do I want to do? And he went out and said, what else am I going to do? And he landed on one of his passions, which was craft beer and the idea of brewing it and then creating a tap room and a menu of craft beers that are in and around, I don't know, 15, 16 anyway, at any given time. He's a local business. I love his story. I watched it. I went over to his place when he had nothing in there. And he kind of, along the way, kept us involved. And I love that because he said that he's taken a lot of inspiration from how we ran our business. And so I was very interested to have him on to talk about, some of his challenges. I want to talk about, some of the business behind it, and even, where he gets the name and the story. So we got Ross Noel from Stonehooker Brewing Company coming in today to talk to us and share some of his insights and story.
I find what was fascinating about him and is fascinating about him is that he was in a completely different field as a profession. He was a tech guy or something.
Yeah, like a Bay Street consultant kind of guy.
Never brewed beer, and took on this. Like some people doubted him. A lot of people doubted him in the space, but the fact that to see what he's done is amazing. That's just focus, determination, and everything else rolled up in
perseverance and all that. Yeah, and he's a great storyteller. I mean, he's definitely he's a great guy to sit down with and just and chat about what's going on. And he's got a deep, rich history in the business that he created, and he loves to tell that story. So let's hear it.
All right, roll it.
Whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, you're staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking and we're staying alive, staying alive.
Well, again, and thanks, Ross, for being here today. I got Ross Noel from Stonehooker Brewing Company with me, and we're going to talk about all things beer, business, and beyond. It's a little different description than I gave you, but it's a good one. Anyway, Ross, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you on. I mean, you're a local business guy. You're a friend. You've been part of Cabin since we started, and we've been watching you since you started. And man, have you ever come to life? What a brand that you brought to the market. And so, I think our viewers and listeners today are gonna get a kick out of what it takes to really start up and push hard, and that has been evidenced by the way that you've brought this brand to life. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Louie. I think it's mutual inspiration. We've watched you from the beginning and felt like we've been part of it. I think that's been a big thing for everybody in the community. They all feel like they've been part of Cabin growing up in this area.
Oh, that's cool. I'm thrilled to hear that because it's been a two-way street. Just to your point, like you end up putting something out there and you get a response. And when it's favorable, you feel like you're fueled and you just want to keep going. And I'm fortunate I haven't seen the other side of that where it hasn't been favorable and it's been, a bit of a let's go try that again. But there's a lot of effort that goes into it and a lot of setbacks. And, I think that people, no matter what their interest is, whether they ever want to own a business or they're in a business and want to improve it or, just have these visions of what this could look like, may not understand all of the efforts and the roadblocks, the setbacks, the triumphs and the failures. And so, I like to have people tell the story and about how they got there. And, craft beer is, of course, there's this huge popularity for almost the boutique nature of it, the specialty of it, and it's grown in interest. It's now taking up space on the shelves, whereas 10, 15 years ago it was less, even more before that. But now there's this whole movement behind craft beer, and almost every town, from anywhere, for anybody that's listening, there's likely a craft brewery not far from you. So you're not far from us, and you got a killer name and you got a great story. So why don't we give everybody that's listening the backstory? So how did Ross Noel come into the love and passion for beer, and where did you come from to get there?
Well, I had a previous career, and I slugged it out on Bay Street for a long time, and lived in the tech world down there, and looked at where things were going and what I was doing, and then reached a stage in my life where I looked at myself and I looked at my wife and we looked at each other and said, what do you want to do for the next 20 years? And I clearly didn't want to keep doing what I was doing. It was enough of that. And we both have an entrepreneurial spirit. My wife has been a business owner for a long time, and we collectively believed in being business owners. And it came down to what do we want to do? And we looked at, we actually looked at a variety of different things. And of course, whenever you get into this conversation with people about, following your dream or opening a business, it comes down to pursuing your passion. And we've all heard that many times. And so you look for your passion. You look for, well, what is that? And there's certain aspects of business that you can be passionate about. You don't have to have something that's as sexy as beer to be passionate about it. You could be, selling widgets, but it's the passion for that business. So, and we all know people that are passionate about their business. So after some struggles in trying to figure out what it is that I'm really passionate about, I guess what snuck up on me was craft beer, because I love beer. I tell my wife I love you almost as much as beer, and she's good with that. The thing that I've come to realize about beer is that it's something that's been part of my life for a long time. I've enjoyed making it. I certainly enjoy drinking it, and I've enjoyed the discoveries along the way. And there's a lot of discovery that you can do with beer. You can travel to other countries. You can go to breweries. You can really see the world through the eyes of the beer glass.
Yeah, a beer lover. I mean, tours set up around the world to be able to hit your favorites or the ones that are really inspiring, and you just can't wait to get there. Not unlike wine. I mean, it's raised its level and its pedigree is at, I wouldn't say, well, in a lot of cases, if you're a beer lover, it's at the same level. Your interest in beer could be the interest in wine, and, have that passion for it. So I love that. I love that, people have made businesses out of the business of beer beyond just selling beer.
Well, it is so much more than beer, and I think that was the thing that really struck me was how collegial the industry was or is. Mm-hmm. My first beer festival, going to that was a turning point for sure. That was an eye-opener. It was an introduction to so many different craft brewers, where I was not just going up and sampling their product, but I was asking them how they're doing and how's their business and what's this like to be in this business. And I couldn't have hit upon a more friendly and collegial group of people. And I thought, this is an industry I'd like to be a part of. And once I discovered craft beer, discovered the flavors and the opportunity there, and then the people in the craft beer industry, that was it.
You were hooked.
I was hooked.
You were hooked.
Yeah.
Well, that tells me, it brings me at least to the idea that you find the passion, you start to pursue that, and you get into it. And I remember in the early days of Stonehooker, you were over at the shop, and we were talking about what you were planning on doing, and you said, why don't you come on over and take a look? And I came over, and I didn't know what I was going to be looking at. I thought we were going to be watching, beer being made, and that would have been new for me because, admittingly, I'm not a big beer drinker. However, I do love the taste and flavors of craft beer versus mass-produced beer. And so when I went over, I saw what would be, I guess, a beer conveyor belt, a box conveyor belt, and a couple of big vats in the corner and a wide open space with somebody that was really passionate about what was about to happen in here. And that was the early days of Stonehooker. What a cool thing to see from, the point where nothing was there. It was just an idea. And even the name. I mean, where did you get the name Stonehooker?
Well, I think a big part of the craft brewing industry is to celebrate your community and your local culture and your local history. And I think it's the authenticity of craft beer takes us back to a time when things were simple, when they were made out of simple, pure ingredients. And that's what craft beer is all about. So when we go back in the history of our community, you look at what's significant. And I came upon this story just walking across beside the Credit River. There's some podiums by the river there, and there's one that talks about the Stonehookers and that industry. And that kind of intrigued me. At first I thought, really? You're fishing for stones? You're pulling rocks out of the water? But the further I got into it, the more I realized this was not only an industry in Port Credit's time, but it was the most significant part of Port Credit's history was this industry. And then it translates beyond that to the city of Toronto, where you look at everything in Toronto before 1915, the whole city was built on stone that was hauled out of the lake. So this is not only a Port Credit story, it's a Ontario, North Shore of Lake Ontario story, and it's in fact it's a Canadiana story. It's a piece of our history that's really not it's not in the history books.
No.
So I thought, here's a great opportunity to bring this out in a way that attaches itself to an authentic old school product. And at the same time, it's also a name or a word that you're not going to easily forget. It sounds dirty. It's not. But,
It's not.
But it's a lot of fun. We you think about how people are going to order a beer, and if they don't know anything about your product, they're probably going to latch onto the word, and they're going to have some. It's a playful thing. It inevitably ends up being playful. Little story. The first time that I ordered our product in a restaurant, it's at Papa Giuseppe's. And I thought, I want to have this experience of actually seeing our product on the menu and ordering it. And of course, the server doesn't know us from Adam. I'm not sure if Adam was there. I think he might have been.
Adam's your brewmaster.
Adam is our brewmaster, yeah. So every time I use that expression now, they don't know him from Adam. It's like, oh yeah, well, okay, it's more than an expression now, thanks to Adam. But ordering the beer was an experience because I asked if there was any craft beer on the menu, and she highlighted that there was this new one. It's a Stonehooker. And I said, oh, great. How about a Stonehooker? And she kind of gave me a wink, and she said, sure, I'll get you a hooker. And so, we all had a little laugh around the table and thought, okay, well, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen with our brand, and we're okay with that.
Well, that's actually a really neat point because, in building brands, name is really important unless you have bags of cash, and then you can make any name important. And in most cases, we don't. As small business, as entrepreneurs, you end up, with passion, create a name that, potentially can move way beyond you. And that's the hope. And if you've been able to do it in a way that creates frequency and recall in the mind of the audience, or in this case, the server, there's a way to be able to connect. And that little moment of humor allows another memory to come into play. And all of a sudden, if somebody can play with your brand in a way that's not negative, and this one isn't, and it's a play on words. I mean, I've heard everything from the stoned hooker. Yes, I'm going to get you a hooker. Have you been down to the hooker's place down there? You hear all of this, but what's happened there is marketing magic. That's when you've made your way into the minds of the audience in other ways than simply waving the brand flag. You've had them refer to you favorably and with some humor, and that creates recall. So, I mean, name's an important thing.
It is.
And again, unless you have big bags of cash to promote it and make something important when it's not, or have frequency and recall, you really got to rely on the fact that you're connecting in a way right off the bat without them even trying or tasting or seeing the brand. It somehow makes its way into the audience. And that's really cool. So I think that you landed on the right answer, especially when you're celebrating local and the story of the importance of what Stonehookers were doing in Lake Ontario and any other lake around the world, because I'm sure that we're not completely unique in
Actually, we are.
Is that right?
That's another cool thing about it. This industry didn't exist anywhere else in the world.
Is that right?
It's unique to the North Shore of Lake Ontario because of the geology of this area. There's this bed of rock. I could bore you with the whole geological thing. I'm not the expert on it, but I will tell you that there's this layer of Dundas shale, which was scraped away by the glaciers. So it's just a whole series of perfect events that created this deposit of hand-bombable stone that's just littered on the north shore of Lake Ontario. The industry doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
Incredible. Well, I'm fortunate in that the foundation of my 190-year-old home here in Port Credit is built on stones that were hooked 25, 30 feet from my front door. And at a time when there was people, doing a lot of different things in this neighborhood, I think that's incredible. I've got that piece of history that's etched into my property forever. So I share the Stonehooker experience. Let's get back to beer.
Sure.
So you go from Bay Street, you end up creating a brand. Had you had any other small businesses along the way, or was this the first venture to jump into something independent?
Well, my small business experience was mostly consulting.
Okay.
So I did a lot of full-time gigs, did a lot of contracting, and so I was a consultant, and I had that kind of business where when I wasn't working, I wasn't making any money, and it would you do well when you did well, but so we had to maintain books and all that kind of stuff, and I'd had other ideas that kind of floated around, but this was really one that I ramped up to. And knowing that, this is not something I'm going to go at and fail. Failure was clearly not an option.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much you have to put up front. There's too much investment. It's too much of your soul is going to go into this. So the concept of being an entrepreneur and failing a couple of times before you get it right, no.
It wasn't on your book.
That was not on.
Yeah.
And it was certainly not on for my wife Lisa either. So, when we tackled this, we wanted to do it right.
So, what kind of roadblocks or setbacks did you see along the way? Because I know that, from concept to completion, it probably took more than you expected, and anybody jumping in, of course, recognizes, just like a renovation, you're going to reveal things that you had no idea were going to be roadblocks or cause you more effort, cause you challenge. So, like, what kind of roadblocks and setbacks did you see along the way? Because concept is great. Location you had a conveyor belt that could move boxes, and then what happens next?
Oh boy. Well, it does depend on how you look at it. A lot of businesses look like they just pop right up, but we don't always know about the years of planning that went into them. I developed a relationship with a fellow that was opening a cidery out west, and I should check in with him to see how that's going. But I remember that he put together a business plan and tackled it with a lot of planning and a lot of analysis, and really had a very comprehensive business plan. But what he didn't have was a location. So while I was already opening, he was still looking for a location, and it was not possible without a location.
Sure.
It is possible to build a brand without a location, and
Sure.
there's contract brewers that do that. But I knew from the outset that my business defined was going to be a bricks and mortar craft brewery. So it did require a location, and the concept was initially something that had walkability. I was big on walkability. That's why we live where we live. Wanted it to be in Port Credit, wanted to have something that was accessible to people. And the idea of craft beer and actually making craft beer and making your own craft beer was where it started. And I jumped from one business idea to the brewing idea by making a $5,000 commitment on equipment that I picked up off, of all places, Kijiji.
Okay.
There's my plug for Kijiji.
There you go.
And hopefully they'll plug me back. Probably not, but that $5,000 commitment, of course, was a paper cut in the big scheme of things, but it started the process, and the process was, okay, now I've got some equipment and I have to have a place to put it. Where's that going to be? wanted it to, then you get back to all your constraints that you're working with. And one of them was, it's got to be local.
Mm-hmm.
I've commuted across the city before, and no, we're not doing that for this venture. It needs to be close to home, because I know I'm going to be spending a lot of time there and a lot of time going back and forth. So by design, I started looking along Lakeshore, and I basically went from Clarkson through into Long Branch and Mimico, as far as Mimico, and started looking at properties and opportunities for being able to brew beer. And I started to realize, of course, I'm learning all the time. It's like, the education had started, and I was completely into it and very committed. And that was a good feeling. There was no waffling or lack of motivation here. It was absolutely, full on commitment I was on a mission.
You're doing it.
We're on a mission. And you quickly find out that brewery doesn't coexist very well with residents on the second floor.
Of course.
So you can rule out all those spaces. And it started to look more and more like it's got to have some industrial size to it, and that kind of, capability. And I went quickly from a retail storefront idea, which had the walkability and maybe that, brew your own kind of boutiqueness.
Little DIY feel.
The nano brewery.
Nano brewery.
And I discovered the location that we're at now. And once I discovered that, I would say right around the same time, I had also discovered what the relative advantages and disadvantages were for a brew your own operation versus production craft brewing. And it comes down to volume. I mean, there's no question. So I scouted out a lot of other businesses at the brew your own places and talked about how much beer they were making on a weekly basis. And most of them were making their money on wine by this time.
Is that right?
Yeah. There's just not enough volume going through there. Mm-hmm. And that's for a lot of good reasons. You look at the pitfalls of do-it-yourself brewing, and one of them is packaging. So another lesson along the way. Brewing beer is one thing. Packaging is another. And if you're going to be in the brewing business, you're not just brewing beer, you're packaging beer. And packaging the beer is half the business. So you need space and you need equipment. And it morphed very quickly with all these realizations into the idea that this wasn't going to be a brew-it-yourself place. We're going to be a craft brewery. And so now I've made a commitment on a space, and things start really happening. Or do they? Right? Because that's when you start feeling all the setbacks. Because before you know it, you're paying rent. The concept is just a concept until you have a spot. So you have to have the spot, and then it's planning and acquisition. And then you're on a race. You're on the race to open. And that race is one that's fraught with all kinds of peril, all kinds of pitfalls, and mud holes and wipeouts on the side of the road. And you've got to try and keep it between the guardrails and keep the thing on the road. So it did seem like it took an awfully long time. There was definitely a lot of setbacks due to, I would say the most significant thing would be municipal hoops that we needed to jump through. And of course, you've got all kinds of licensing and everything with a brewing operation. But a lot of those setbacks were municipal, and we learned a lot of lessons along the way.
I can only imagine. I mean, any operation, knowing that there is regulatory, there's compliance, there's illegal, there's all of the pieces that a business needs to make sure they're well set into. Add to it, production in a food environment, something that's safe, and then the packaging that has to happen on top of that, and making sure that's safe. I mean, you got a long list of things to make sure that you're checking boxes for. And I imagine by this time you've got a bit of a team coming in to help out. You've found your brewmaster along the way, because you're not actually physically making the beer. You've got somebody that's been doing that for a while. So when did Adam join and be part of the process?
There was a time I guess nearing the end of 2017 when I realized that I was spending the vast majority of my time, which was completely consumed in the production or the build of the I shouldn't say production because that's a different word for us now. It was mostly in the plant. Now we divide it up into plant and production. So I was all about the plant. I was all about building the brewery and dealing with the Ontario Building Code and building permits and all that stuff. So a lot of what I was doing was not brewing at all. And sometimes you take a step back and go, what am I doing here?
That's my business.
Yeah, I thought I was getting into this business to brew beer. And people would say, have you brewed any beer yet?
Right.
And, because I still along the way, I'm going to all the craft beer conferences. I'm developing relationships in the industry. They're asking how I'm doing. And, have you brewed any beer yet? And I'm saying, well, no. I spent all my time in dust and dirt and concrete and plumbing and building permits and all the rest of that. So I was doing a lot of project management. That's all I was doing. And people would say, sometimes they'd say, do you have a brewing background? I go, no. Oh, but you're opening a brewery. I'd say, what is your background? I'd say, well, it's project management. Are you doing any of that? Yeah.
Far too much.
So the odd thing was that I went from being a professional project manager to being a project manager. So it's a good thing too, though, because you take what you have in your toolbox and you this is what helps you do what you want to do. You look at all the things you have, and that was definitely one of the things I had in my toolbox. So I realized that I was neglecting the product, and so then we put together a job description, if you will, or a posting for a product manager. We wanted somebody that was going to develop the product, the brand, the marketing, all of that, the packaging, the label, and we did some recruiting. My wife, Lisa, has been a recruiter for a long time, so she does a great job, and that's why we have such great people.
That's a big plus.
It's a huge plus. So we're a good combination. I've got this huge project, and when I need people, I just look at Lisa and say, okay,
help.
And she can find them. As I say, she's done very well for us in assembling the team that we have, or recruiting people. We had an initial person come in that we thought would be great. And she had some experience in the craft brewing industry, and thought that she might be able to help us. Made her an offer, and she turned it down.
Oh boy!
So, okay.
Is this a Ringo Starr story?
Yeah, just about. Yeah, Peter
Best.
Peter Best, and then they went to Richard Starkey. So Peter Best didn't take the job, and for good reasons. She didn't want to shaft us.
Fair.
She knew she was going to be moving out of the city, and we still actually have a relationship because I know the person that she works for, and anyway, that's just kind of thing that goes on in the industry. But she was actually kind to us by turning it down. So we went back and we went shopping again for a product manager. And lo and behold, I get a few applications, and I'm interviewing a few people. And one of the guys that I'm interviewing, well, it's actually it happened a lot quicker than that. I met Adam Cherry at Tim Hortons, because my place was a Dust Bowl.
Okay.
So we had an interview at Tim Hortons. By the end of the interview, he was hired.
That's great.
Here's a guy that had such passion and continues to have such passion for craft beer. And we hit it off. He became that product manager, and then he surprised us. Because what we didn't realize is that this guy, lots of people are home brewers, but this guy is so into beer and into the science and into that breadth of knowledge about the product, the biology, and just the passion for the product. And so passion's great, but he can also deliver the goods. He starts surprising us with samples of what he's what he's been brewing, and I've got chills going up and down my spine. I'm just like, whoa. And then we actually, fairly early on, we hit on Broad Reach. I tasted this product, and I was looking at this, and this is just fantastic. There weren't that many New England IPAs out on the market. So I thought, okay, we need to put this to the test. And by this time, we had a bit of a regular following of folks that would drop in on us on Friday afternoon, including my engineer and a couple of other people that enjoyed the beer tastings we were doing, because we were all about the product and all about sampling what's out there. So every Friday, we'd have a little sampling session. So this particular Friday, we assembled all the best, actually, Adam did this. He assembled all the best IPAs he could get his hands on, all the best New England, the same style as Broad Reach, and put them out there in nondescript glasses just with a number on them, and we did a blind taste test. Broad Reach came in number 1 or number 2 on everybody's card, and it was one of those watershed moments where we realized, wow, we've got something here.
You might have hit gold.
Yeah. So we realized also that we didn't want to go to market with a lager or pale ale or just another beer. We wanted to go to market with something that was going to be a little more, I'm not going to say revolutionary, but to some people it is. To some people, drinking a New England IPA is like no other beer they've ever had.
Okay.
A lot of people that don't drink beer, we've encountered, they'll have a New England IPA, especially they'll have ours, because that's the one we're going to offer them, and they change their minds. All of a sudden now they do like beer. They've just never had a beer like that.
I have to put myself in that category, because that's really what I came into it as. I'm a spirits guy when I am drinking, and beer is one of those hot days in the summer, and you just can't get a better thirst quench than a great cold beer. But I think you turned the page for me in Broad Reach. And then I was blown away by how many selections you had in such a short time. It seemed like you opened up and there was this menu, like a menu of very different, distinct tasting beers that in some form or fashion could be loved by anybody, despite their flavor appetite or their preference. So like, how do you go from getting that one little well-received beer that you started off with to having such a selection? I mean, was Adam just coming into work every day with something else and putting it on the wall?
Well, he probably could almost. It takes a little longer to brew than that, but Adam's he has well, first of all, he's got a great passion for it, and secondly, he's got a great imagination for beer styles and great understanding of what those styles can do, and the creativity to come up with something that's unique and tweak it a certain way to give it a different flavor profile and try to meet the profile of the beer that we really are trying to market to our customers. So it gets back to marketing. It's like, where are we? What do the people here, what are they interested in drinking? What are the people that we consider in our marketplace interested in drinking? What can we put out into distribution? And you look at the demographics and look at what people like to drink. There's the lager drinkers. There's always going to be the lager drinkers, and the people that want the lawnmower beers or the after hockey beers, and the crushable, quenchable, thirst quenchable types of beers. And then you get other people that walk in and they say, I want the darkest beer you have, or I want the one with the biggest beer you have. And other people that are, the IPA fans. I mean, the IPA is such a huge part of the market now, and I love IPAs, so we have to make, great IPAs. So it really comes back to checking off all the boxes, and we're very proud of our product because we've been able to do that. And And Adam's just, done an outstanding job of being able to not only come up with ideas of his own, but take ideas that we give him, even if he's reluctant to brew them, and still hit it out of the park.
Well, I'd say that's evidenced by every time I drive by the brewery, or I see something on social media. We go into a pandemic, everything gets locked down. The most popular place in town is this lawn on the lakeshore that's just packed, and there's even lineups, and there's people waiting to be able to be social and connect, and they connect over the beer. I love that you built out such a great selection. You've got a great team. And I think it's intimidating for a lot of people that don't know beer but want to know more about beer. Like, I couldn't tell you the difference between an IPA and a lager. So I think that that education piece that happens when you're sitting at the table outside at Stonehooker, the people that are actually bringing that product to you know what's going on. They can give you some great advice and walk you through the flight of beers and the samplings, and that's really cool. That's an experience in itself. You can have a little, you can have a lot, but then you find the one that you love the most. So, I mean, broad reach is your staple, I think, I would say. But like, maybe take us through the difference between the other flavors and the types of beers that you have, and maybe a little education for anybody that doesn't know, the difference between them. I mean, there's obviously a significant difference between large brew manufacturing and craft beer manufacturing. So I want to help people understand why it is they should look into this direction. And not only from the point of supporting local, but the idea behind this is maybe a better choice if you're looking for a different choice.
Well, to take it from the top, statistically, Canadians across the board are drinking less, slightly less year over year, but we're drinking better.
Okay.
So that's where craft beer comes in. And I think what's happening is that people are drinking less of the industrial macro beer and drinking more craft beer. So craft beer is a growing part of the market. Mm-hmm. So one of the challenges, of course, with craft beer is that we love our variety, and we love to make a lot of different styles of beer, especially Stonehooker. Stonehooker probably has one of the widest varieties out there, and it's a blessing and a curse because it allows us to be very interesting. Every time you come into our store, into our tap room, you're going to see different flavors on the menu or different cans in the cooler. But the challenge is getting it to the people. If you're in our local area, I think we're blessed with great beer, and I think if you live in our local area in Lakeview and Port Credit and Long Branch and in this area, then you're blessed with this variety as well because you have access to it. But the way to get out into distribution in this province is through the LCBO, and that means you're either in the grocery store or the LCBO itself, and that's difficult because there's so many people competing for so few spots on the shelf.
On the shelf, yeah.
The LCBO is into all the. They're into everything for everyone. So they've got the spirits and the wine categories as well as craft beer. So craft beer is only one part of their business. And with grocery gets such a small percentage of what they can sell in their marketplace that they're not, fully committed yet. They're still maybe a half an aisle of craft beer in a lot of cases. So it is challenging getting our product out there, but we do have 3 products out in grocery now. I should mention the beer store. There's a couple of our products as well in 7 local beer stores, but we're keeping that fairly close. And as I say, the one product we have now in the LCBO is our flagship beer, so I'll just pull that up here.
Yeah.
So that's this guy right here. Broad Reach, that's our first baby. That's our flagship. And that's a New England IPA. We've got this product in over 180 liquor stores now, and we're pushing to have another product adopted by the LCBO, and we're hoping that will happen soon. We've made some submissions, and I'm not sure if we brought that one. We actually shouldn't bring that one with us. It's Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, which is a rye IPA, and I've see this is also part of the problem when you bring a 6-pack, it's 6 of 16. So I focused on what was new.
So 16 is the current menu.
Current menu, we have 16 in cans, and we actually have 2 in bottles.
Great.
So the premium beers we put in bottles, the more eclectic varieties like the vanilla porter and the Belgian triple. And there'll be a double chocolate milk stout coming very shortly, in time for Christmas.
It's incredible, the flavors that come out of beer.
So we have a couple of others here. If you'd like, I can introduce them, because this has been a very exciting month for us in terms of beer releases. I don't know where to start. I guess the first one we came out with in December was this new IPA. This is part of our Transom series, and we call it the Transom series because here we are. That's the Defiance right there. I have trouble holding this beer without opening it. It's a delicious West Coast American style IPA. It's got those Western American hops in there, and it's straw colored and fairly clear, just absolutely delicious. We are continuing to put out a different variety of IPA in the Transom series with every release. This one in particular is kind of cool because it celebrates an actual Stonehooker called the Defiance, and that's the picture that you see here. That's the Defiance, and that was a ship that was launched out of the Humber Bay, out of the Humber River, long time ago. It was in service for, I think, 65 years. So that's a pretty tough wooden boat, and it was used for stone hooking, among other things. And it was named in defiance of the riparian rights that the farmers were trying to exercise so as to keep the stone hookers away from their shorelines. Of course, the shorelines were, all the stone was being taken up off the bottom, and that was causing some problems with erosion. And so they had a bit of a fight going on. So this ship was called Defiance, and they actually didn't, the odd thing is they actually didn't put the name Defiance on the transom because they stopped putting their names on the transom for fear of identification. So there's a little bit of this.
There's a rich history in everything that you have your hand in, which I love because it's all about storytelling. And this one, you can sit at any one of these cans and have a great story. And what a great opportunity to share a beverage, with somebody and talk about, where this all comes from.
Yeah, that's really a lot of fun for us to be able to celebrate some of this history. So moving on to some of the other things that are perhaps more current. Right now, we're going through a pandemic, and we're all struggling with that to some degree, and certainly some businesses and some people are struggling more than others. We are trying to go about our lives and to continue on, and every day we count on people being there for us so that we can buy groceries, so that we can buy gas, so that we can get health care, and so that we can get emergency response if we need it. All these things that we take for granted. So rather than taking them for granted, we thought, let's celebrate this. Let's honor these people with a beer. We've called it Frontline Heroes. Pull that one out there. And how best to illustrate that? Well, we put together an art contest, and we had various submissions, and finally a winner who came up with this design. As you can see from the can, that there's all kinds of different occupations that are represented here. And this is our tribute to the Frontline Heroes.
That's great.
The proceeds of this can, this is there's more to it. This is also a collaboration. So we collaborated with another local business, because part of what we do is to ask people to support local, and we try to practice what we preach. So we're also supporting local, and so we collaborated with our local coffee guy, Fairgrounds Coffee, Jeff Stinson, and Jeff provided the coffee for this stout. So this is what we call a breakfast stout, because it's got oatmeal in it, and it's got coffee in it, lots of coffee. And I'm not even a coffee drinker, and I'll tell you, I do like it. It's delicious. So this is a great beer for any time of day. Beer is not just for breakfast anymore.
Apparently not. This is the breakfast of heroes. We went from champions to heroes.
It's the breakfast at, and by the way, the proceeds of this go to the Compass.
Oh, that's great. So if you're not in our local area and you've heard a lot about Port Credit and Clarkson and Lakeview and the likes, like any other small town, we're although very connected to a large town, being Toronto, only 15, 20 minutes away. We've got this very village feeling that happens here, this local kind of marketplace, and every one of your communities likely has a food bank or a way to be able to collect donations for people in need, and the Compass is one of ours. So that's an incredible initiative that goes back to helping people that are in most need of help. So we believe strongly in that. I love that you created a product for it, and you're donating proceeds. That's amazing.
It was a lot of fun putting that together, and we had a lot of great players who became stakeholders in the process. The Mississauga Arts Council, who sponsored this, as well as the Lakeview Community Village Partners, who came forward and not only supported the artwork, but they also matched in kind the donations that were made to the Compass Food Bank. And Fairgrounds and Stonehooker donated to that. And remarkably and so generously and graciously, the winner of the art contest, and her name's on the side of the can here. I believe she's been, here she is. So Joanne DeGraff, she's a local teacher and artist, and she put together this label, and she actually donated half of her honorarium back to the Compass. So that was very kind of her as well.
No good deed goes unnoticed, and that's in itself, I think, when you have this collective energy. And I mean, you just talked about a bunch of business things in there that it's mind blowing. I mean, you're not just brewing beer, you're doing sponsorships, you're doing partnerships, you're doing brand activation, you're bringing together a philanthropic piece here. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that just went into just producing that. And that takes a small army or somebody that has zero sleep. And I'm sure you've got both going on in your world. But that needs to be recognized and commended. It's really quite an accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you, Louie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're very proud of it for all those reasons. And it's delicious. Hopefully we'll be cracking that open by the end of this. Another one that I want to introduce everybody to is the gingerbread ale, which is in the spiced ale category. If you liked our pumpkin ale, you'll probably like this one as well. And even if you didn't like the pumpkin ale was delicious, but it's been and gone now. It's a seasonal thing. And this is also a seasonal beer. We brought this out for Christmas. Check it out. It's delicious.
Anything gingerbread, seasonal, it's good.
We don't overdo it. I think that's the nice thing about what Adam puts together is he brings out the notes that speak to the name of the beer. One of the comments that people often give us is they say, the thing I like about your beer is that it tastes the way you say it's going to taste. I think that's a nice compliment. They know what they're getting. They say, yeah, when you describe it this way, that's what it tastes like. And so it's true. And a lot of the reason for that is that when we're naming beers and coming up with what we want to call them, we're actually tasting them at the same time, and we're thinking, how does this inspire us? What name does this inspire? In this case, I will admit we actually set out to create a ginger beer or a gingerbread beer, and then the question was, well, what are we going to call it? And we thought, let's just keep it simple, gingerbread ale.
I think that's part of the fun too, and just your point on the way that it tastes and what they expect. I think part of the fun in being a beer novice, for me, it's like trying to determine what is in there. What's that flavor note? What does it do for me? And what am I getting out of this taste? And so I think that's kind of a fun part of craft beer that you don't get from big beer manufacturers.
Taste is such a huge part of it. That's when it all comes down to it. We often talk about deliciousness. What are we here for? We're here to bring out the deliciousness of craft beer. Sometimes people talk about ABV and alcohol. Oh, craft beer is a lot stronger than this other beer. And they talk, and I'm fairly ambivalent to the alcohol thing, notwithstanding that we do need to function and we do need to, drive and all those things that require a certain amount of self-governance.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be conscious of it. But at the same time, it's not why we brew that beer. We don't brew that beer to make it huge and strong because we're just trying to build a strong beer. It's more that we're interested in that flavor, in that deliciousness, in that and bring out the quality of that beer. And to do so, sometimes you end up brewing a big beer because alcohol is a byproduct of the brewing process. And they kind of go hand in hand. That being said, it's marketing. Again, the sessionable beers, the sessionable being lighter. We have sessionable beers like our light or session IPA is 3.9%. You can, it's a little bit lighter. It's not going to knock a lighter person off their feet. And then we've got some, dessert beers, which might be a little heavier or a little more of a bigger, bolder beer. But again, very palatable. And when you compare it to other spirits, they're still light.
Right.
Right.
What's a sessionable beer?
So sessionable is a beer term that goes back to England, where workers it's part of their culture to take their lunch break and then go back to work. But what they'd be consuming at lunch would be a sandwich and probably beer. So it was important that they had beer that was sessionable, so they could have their session and then return to work, and hence the word sessionable. So it essentially, when we talk about sessionable beers, they're not necessarily light beers, but we talk about more sessionable than others. So, for example, even our flagship beer, it's a New England IPA. A lot of New England IPAs are in the 6 to 7% range. Ours is 5.4. So it's more sessionable.
Got it.
From a marketing perspective, that to us is a good thing because it means that you can sit down and have a couple of these and still be able to, drive home and so on. And it's an easy drinking, makes it more of an easy drinking beer. On that note, easy drinking beers, we also have another new introduction, which takes us back to the COVID thing.
Okay.
So part of the COVID situation is that not only are there a lot of people and a lot, they talk about all the statistics, we're all inundated with the infection rates and so on and so forth, and the number of positives and the number of negatives. But one thing that we forget is how many people in this country at any point in time at the present are isolated, either quarantined, in self-isolation because they've had to be tested. So for every person that tests positive, there's a whole slew of people that are having to be tested, and even though they may be testing negative, they have to self-isolate for 14 days.
Right, quarantine.
So there's that level of isolation, and then of course there's, as a nation, we've closed our borders. So Canada has become a country that is in isolation, and a lot of us are living our lives right now in isolation, especially noticeable during Christmas time when we're thinking about whether or not we can have our families be with us during the Christmas holidays. So anyway, this beer comes about, I think, at a very interesting time for us. The hops and the ingredients were actually donated by our suppliers. It's an interesting beer because they did this program across Canada. They selected 12 breweries, and we were fortunate enough to be selected. And every brewery is making the same beer, the same ingredients, all Canadian grains, all Canadian hops. And we've labeled it in kind. And as a result, there are several of these out there brewed by several brewers across the country, and it'd be interesting to try them and see how they compare.
That's a great story, and it is very timely. Things come at you for unknown reasons. This one could be one of those stories you look at in 5 or 6 years and say, "Do you remember when?"
Yeah,
and look what happened.
yeah, yeah.
I like how creative you are and how we approach these beer flavors and bring into market something that's timely. It's very, very compelling from a business standpoint.
So I'm going to take you to the other extreme. So this, the Isolation Nation is a very easy drinking pale ale. I believe it's probably 5%. Yep, 5.3. Easy drinking. I was pleasantly surprised. Again, it was more delicious than I thought it might be. I thought it might be a little bit more on the, kind of less interesting side compared to a lot of other beers, but sure enough, it's very thirst quenching, and it's got some subtle notes to it with the Sasquatch hops, and check it out. It really is delicious. Easy drinking. We're going to go to the other extreme, which is the biggest, boldest IPA that we have, which is the Double New England IPA, and we call this the Spanker. Okay.
I love it.
So we can have some fun with that, because obviously if you have too many, then that's considered a spanking.
You got it.
The spanker is actually a nautical term. If you look at a schooner that has 2 masts, as schooners do, the main sail on the rear or aft mast is called the spanker. So it's the biggest, baddest sail on the boat, and it's the one that, potentially that's the boom that could hit you over the head if you're back there at the helm. So this one could definitely hit you over the head. It comes in at 8.2%.
My gosh.
And it is absolutely full of flavor.
Speaking of flavor, I think we may have to just pour something here. I'm going to take your recommendation to see what you think might be the best answer for somebody doing my first taste, as if it were my first taste. Let's pretend it was. I'll take your recommendation. You want to do a little sampling, a little taste test, and see how we do?
Absolutely. Not shy of doing that at all. In fact, I would answer that by saying that most often, if you're not a beer drinker, we actually recommend that you start with this one.
Right.
And it's especially for those people that say, I don't drink beer. I don't normally like beer. So I don't think that's you. I think you like
I'm a little past that now. Although I do love that. It was actually the one that got me into it. It's got a citrus flavor, if I recall. But it really got me interested in beer, which is really why I thought I want to have you on this show, so that we could talk about beer and the fact that there's a lot more that goes into it than just putting an alcoholic product into a can. There's a whole passion. There's a creativity. There's a lot of considerations in how you come to life with these flavors. So I think that needs to be celebrated. And I know you tell the story online at Stonehooker Brewing Company. Sorry, Stonehooker Brewing Company. And they could find out more of that. But really, the beauty is in the tasting and the trying. I think that's a lot of fun. So I'm up
Absolutely.
to whatever you think is the best answer.
This time of day, probably I think the hands down winner would be the breakfast stout.
Well, that's great too, and it's frontline heroes, and it's about honoring and being grateful for what everybody's been doing. Let's have some of that then.
Sure.
Yeah, let's try that. I also want to know, we were challenged, of course, like I said earlier, about lockdown and pivot and all that stuff, and here you are. You had a tap room going. You started doing events. You did tours. You had people in your brewery. And then, of course, everything changed. And how is it that you go from practically just starting up and opening the doors, and within a little time frame, now have to change the business overnight? And that's that pivot piece. But you did it really well. I mean, what's the success story there? What was the driving force between making it all come together in a time when people were failing and they just weren't able to pick up and move on like you did?
A lot of it is survival. like anybody that's in a business, we wanted to keep going. We did not relish the idea of shutting down.
Right.
In the initial stages, in stage one, there was that suspense there for probably a week or so, where we were wondering whether or not we were going to be deemed as an essential business. And I'm sure that was an interesting debate in the legislature and perhaps behind closed doors, where I would imagine that shutting down alcohol retail and so on would be tantamount to prohibition. And I think there's been enough lessons learned already about what happens when you have prohibition that they wisely chose not to shut those things down. And there's other aspects of what's going on that I think are where products like beer and alcohol have a part to play, and part of it is health and mental health. And people look at the simple things in life that they enjoy and ask that you don't take those away.
Right. So I think there is a responsibility play here too, and there's also this connection to familiarity. And I actually had a guest on a little while ago, JT Wahlberg, that talked about overcoming addiction and alcohol abuse, and how, in fact, a withdrawal without alcohol in a lot of cases can be the nail in the coffin. And and then all of a sudden it made me respect and understand that shutting down and preventing people from access to something that they became so dependent on is so detrimental. And I know that's not the story that we're talking about here. We're talking about being responsible and having a healthy relationship with such an incredibly crafted product that it does have this sense of familiarity and comfort in the fact that you're still continuing this part of your life in a way that was normalcy. And that, I think, does a lot to your mental health. So I'm happy that you're able to continue. I saw, like I said, your lawn was filled all the time. You brought music in. You really did a great job of stringing together a quick answer that not only kept the doors open, but actually probably exposed your brand to a lot of people that may not have seen it early at any time before. So, I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
That in itself, from a business standpoint, is big. It's huge.
Well, let's drink to that.
I was going to say, let's drink to that. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers to your health.
To all our frontline heroes. Oh, that's delicious.
I love the creamy coffee head on this. You can smell the coffee in there.
This is something that I encourage anybody that hasn't spent any time at their local craft brewery to go and enjoy and find out which one makes the most sense for you. This is such an easy flavor. I don't even feel like I'm drinking beer, in my definition of what beer is, because I grew up with big box beer stores or beer companies.
Yeah, as a lot of us did, right?
Yeah, most of us did.
That's all we knew.
I like the height of where we're going with craft brewing, and I think that's the local play is great. I mean, there's been so many good things that you brought up during this conversation that around business and creativity and bringing to market something that's huge. Go ahead.
Do you want to teeter totter back into? I feel compelled to answer some of your questions about COVID and pivoting and so on. So maybe we can teeter totter back into beer with every.
I think that's a perfect
with every
teeter.
sip. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to speak to that because we did a lot of work in trying to adjust to the ever-changing conditions.
Mm-hmm.
That was it's definitely kept us on our toes and been something that's well over and above the regular business as usual that is already, challenging at times and certainly very busy for us. We felt that there was a lot of drivers in this. One is to keep going, to try to be safe and respectful of our patrons and provide them with that comfort level and safety that they would expect, and to be compliant and to do the right thing. So we were looking at what not only what we were required to do, but we talked about what we should be doing and what's best for our customers. So one of the things, for example, is that we started masking right away, way before we were told. We already had masks in place. We required that any packaging or any contact with the product meant that operators on our packaging line needed to be masked. They needed to be wearing gloves, one-time use. And, we put in a glove policy in the front of our house where customers are not allowed to touch product or touch our refrigerator with gloves on. You actually have to remove them and sanitize your hands. Mm-hmm. Those are our rules, house rules. Because we found that at times we'd get somebody walking in with gloves that they've been wearing all day to pump gas and go everywhere and do everything. And then now they want to come in and handle the product in the self-serve fridge. And we're, no, can't do that. So we came up with some rules of our own. So we had protocol of our own before a lot of the other things came out that necessitated, the other compliance things, putting up signs, and we already had the social,
and contact
physical
tracing.
Distancing, and contact tracing came along. So we've been trying to provide a safe and healthy environment for our product and for our people, and most importantly, our customers. And it's been something that we've been very vigilant about. And I don't know if that's the right word, but we've put a lot of effort into that. So the next thing that we were wanting to do, of course, is to make the most out of the summer. Last year we had a smaller patio. This year we spoke to our neighbors and we had a good response, and we decided to expand our patio, and we did. And it was a great success. It allowed people to feel comfortable, to be outside, to be physically distanced when they needed to be, so the tables were set apart. And then when we were allowed to provide entertainment, which was not until July, I think. Actually, it was after July, because July 1st we could only spin.
Yeah, that's right.
We had to spin vinyl on July 1st. But once we were able to get into, I guess it was probably stage 3, then we started to introduce the idea of having some music and seeing how that would work. And we quickly realized that one group of people that have really suffered through this pandemic are the musicians.
Oh, it's been horrendous.
They've taken a beating where they've not been able to perform. People that would normally play, upwards of 100 or more gigs by that time of the year, they had only had, 3, or in some cases 1.
Or none.
We had Susie McNeil, her and her husband Andrew, they played, and it was their first gig.
Oh my gosh!
And that was in September. So it was great to be able to get the musicians out. They were thrilled to be there, and of course, I had people hug me, even though they're not supposed to, and they were thanking me for bringing live music out, because they hadn't heard live music for, in some cases, like 9 months. So we carried that on through November, and we were fortunate that we had that nice Indian summer at the beginning of November. And sadly, the numbers have gone up, and they had to shut down the indoor dining, and we've not been able to continue with service at the front of the house. But we're still selling beer.
You're still selling beer, and you're making an incredible product, really. And I think that the exposure and the chance to try something new is, like I suggested, everybody should try, just because it's a different experience than I think what you'd expect if you're not a beer lover to begin with. So thanks for sharing a bunch of information about the beers and the manufacturing, the process, just the business behind the business. I think that's very interesting. And I think there's a bunch of aspiring brewmasters out there that, would look at this with, big eyes and say, I can. And I think you're a great proof point to say that you actually can. you can make that pivot from a business standpoint and follow the passion, follow the dream, and not only put out something, but put out something that gets so well received that it kind of just keeps on fueling you, and it's inspiring to me. So huge congratulations on everything that you've done with Stonehooker. I always like to ask, just before we finish, if there's anything that you, from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, because we got to know a little bit more about Ross here today, that you can't live without, anything that's got such an important part of your life that you need to have that with you or have it at your disposal.
That's a tough one. That's kind of a desert island question.
Sure it is. What are you taking? Which top albums? And
yeah. I don't know if I could get by with one record.
Yeah, no doubt.
I might have to bring a couple with me, but I think a lot of lessons have been learned along the way, and yeah, if you do a little retrospect and say, how did we get here and what's so important? Obviously, beer.
Without a question.
Obviously, that support from your partner, your loved one. My wife Lisa has been, she's been not on my back, but she's been once in a while on my back. But there were some times when we were, still trying to get open, and it was getting there. But she's had my back all the time, and she's been a great partner. So, it depends on what level you want to talk about it. There's no doubt that having a partner, such a key partner in my life and my business, no doubt that would be the number one. And then you get back to sort of the more of the creature comforts, obviously beer and music. Music is something that's very important to me, and it's been like beer. It's been with us all along the journey. Even when we've been a dust bowl and under construction, the music's playing.
The music's playing. Oh my gosh.
Got to keep the music going.
We could shake hands up to our armpits. It's the support that you need. It's the little pieces that keep you very happy. Beer could be a part of that. Music's definitely a part of that. And I think that's had to have a great contribution to your success. So
I could give you another answer too. I could say technology has been a big part of it. We're producing a product which requires a plant that has a lot of moving parts.
Sure.
Not only in its hardware, but also in its software. And as much as we like to make things in a traditional way, we also realize that we live in a world that has the regular modern complications of tax reporting and sales and finance and all those good things, and some supportive shareholders. So it's very important that we have some technology working for us. So we have systems that take us from point of sale all the way through, and in the back of the house we have an ERP system that tracks everything we do for production. So the good news is that we embrace that. I'm a tech guy. I've got another person that works for me that's a former tech guy, and our brewmaster is very much into the technology. So we've been able to employ those things and leverage those things as well.
There's incredible tools out there for business, and tech is definitely a piece of that, and it's making our lives a little easier along the way. So I'm glad you said that. Ross, where can our listeners today find out more about Stonehooker?
We have a website that we like to have everybody take a look at because there's always interesting stuff on there. Our beers will take you there. Our events will take you there. You will find our events there, and you'll find out more about us there, and that's stonehooker.com.
Stonehooker.com, and I love your staff photos. Probably one of my favorite spots, and the history behind it. It's amazing. So visit stonehooker.com. I have Ross Noel today from Stonehooker Brewing Company here, and I can't thank you enough for the time you spent, for giving us a little insight, a little information, a little entertainment and education. So thank you, Ross.
It's my pleasure, Louie.
And for everybody listening today, thanks for spending time with us. I'm Louie J, and this is Staying Alive.